Paul, we are official now, if you want to call us to order.
Okay, so let's start. So let me just go over the agenda because it might save some folks some time too. So normally we do the public comment period, which is 20 minutes max, 3 minutes per person. We go over our minutes.
Don't touch it.
I didn't touch it. And then the last thing, but the first thing on new business is we want to reduce the current proposal. So which means withdraw it off of the Stafford's property. Back down onto David Couch's. Further down onto his.
We want to discuss it and see where everybody wants to
but I
do.
just wanted you, before we get into this, to know that that was our first intention. So that changes what you want to say, or if you want to skip that, that's fine. But
I'll skip.
I know. But I just wanted you to know that before we do that. So if you guys want to, you need to read the minutes because they weren't set out. You're going to need to read those.
We could go ahead and do the public comments, open that up, and
Yeah.
then when we get through that, maybe we'll be ready to vote on the minutes.
I'll do two things at once. So anybody like to speak or like to go around the room? I'll tell you, let me give you a sign-up sheet just to say who's here. Did I not do it correctly? I thought this.
I thought you called it to order. Yeah. And since we don't have Jason taking minutes,
You're ready.
I'll do that. Yes.
It's just.
Do you want me to?
If you would.
I will.
That'd be great.
Try.
6:22. Call to order.
Oh.
Due to lack of quorum, please.
Yeah. I'm afraid something's gonna dump out of here. Would you mind just
Sure.
passing that around? Would somebody like to speak? Or I just squelch all
No,
that?
I'll be happy to say something.
Okay.
Don Wendell, 34-6 Winslow Drive. From your previous comment, kind of goes with what I was going to ask, and you kind of answered it already somewhat. I knew, as you know, the council voted not to do eminent domain. The committee basically said, we don't want to do eminent domain. So my question was going to be, based on the original proposal, there was some, obviously some land in there and houses that were that would be in that area that could cause eminent domain. So what I'm gathering out of this now is the eminent domain question is totally gone. So anything that is proposed will not require eminent domain. So that's kind of a comment, and because I know you still have to work things out, but my understanding is since the council does not want eminent domain and the committee basically said they don't want it, because as you remember in the April minutes, Ashton had commented that usually on projects this large, there usually is an eminent domain that needs to take place based on his experience. And I'm just making a comment. So what I'm gathering out of this is that there will not be any eminent domain involved in this process whatsoever. Now, if you want to respond, that's fine, but that's what I'm getting out of this.
When we get to that first item, I'd like to speak to that.
Okay.
Sure. I just want to say, Don, that I don't believe the council voted on that.
Okay.
There was just a discussion.
A discussion.
And that, if the council changes, that can change. So you need to be aware of that.
And just realize well, we'll get into it later. Realize there's two parts to that. There's the taking part, which nobody's in favor of, and there's the negotiation part. They're both called the same. So when two parties can't agree on a price, that process is still called eminent domain. So just realize that. So as we throw that four-letter word around, be careful that it means two things.
I guess I mean it more on the derogatory side.
I know, right.
That's where I was.
Just realize what you're saying. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, four-letter
Yes, sir. Dwayne, yeah. First, Dwayne Crawford, 1106 NC Highway 150 West.
I want you to know my position on trails, and I've shared this with you before. I'm agnostic. I'm not for or against, positive, negative. I can take it or leave it. Trails are trails. I don't use them, I work a lot, but they don't bother me either. What is a concern is two things related to trails, is the implementation cost and especially its long-term sustainment cost. Very concerned about that long-term sustainment. And the politics of these trails, eminent domain, intrusion or infringement on personal space, either the overt or the personal perspective of appearance of intimidation. And I don't like none of that thing. I sympathize with the Staffords, the Nelsons. I very much sympathize with them and favor on their side. So that said, I got some questions. Has this committee done has this committee done an inventory of the trails that we do have present in the 10-mile circle around the center of Summerfield? Because I know they're there, like Townsend, Lake Higgins. I don't know if 10 miles would get us to Battleground Park, but I think it'd get us darn close. I think it would be in the citizens' interest to have that as a basis on which to make any decisions to spend more money to provide more trails. Because into itself, we can get focused on a trail, and that's what I'm seeing is focus on this mountain to sea trail, and I'm not sure what already exists and the amenities and what people are using and taking into account of that decision. That's one thing. The other thing is I keep hearing about the mountain to sea trail. I see it as no option based on what I'm seeing as other than going through our park. I mean, is it an option that it goes down to 20 and not go through the park? Are other routes an option? And I know I heard it at the first presentation in front of council. The rep, I don't remember his name, older gentleman, very thin, got up and said at some point we have to make a decision. Are we going to do this or not? Or is it just so much resistance and friction that we're just going to say this is not going to go? Is that an option that's on the table for consideration, or is this committee consider that not an option, or an option at least last resort? So that's it. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
I'll comment, Dwayne Pratt, while we're waiting on the minutes. Right under your camera is a large map that looks like this.
Mhm.
That is the mountains to sea route kind of progress. You might want to, while we're having this meeting, if you want to smoke that over since you're sitting right there.
I've been watching it already.
Okay.
And I did one of the things we're trying to do is, before we go on to any next proposal, is try to talk to citizens before their name shows up in the paper or the town council meeting. So lesson learned, but even with Pat Jinks, we couldn't avoid talking about him last week because of a prior offer he had made 3 years ago. But I called him the very next day and got the message of what we did, why we did it, just so he wouldn't read about the paper or on the website. So he was fine. So that was the one thing in somebody's name in the minutes. I see that, but I did follow up and actually talk to his secretary. It wasn't, I just let me go real quick scratch.
They've all probably read the minutes if they're ready to vote on that.
Any changes to the minutes? but are you still free?
No, I wasn't here last week, so I don't know.
Okay, well then they're perfect to you.
Yeah, let's do it.
You good?
Yeah.
We'll watch this. Next watch this. I guess we can do a motion. Have a second, so all those in favor? 6-0. Nobody opposed. Okay?
One question I have is it possible to get these ahead of time?
Yes.
Yeah.
With Jason's school and everything, we're going to put on the agenda tonight, we can, or the next time.
Let's go ahead and do it tonight.
Yep,
Yeah,
okay.
do that part.
We'll just
And-
put
and
it
we'll
there.
do it as another item in there before we adjourn, just we'll get to that.
With his schedule and his demands, especially with the school, thing, we need to switch, especially when we switch, just pick a new secretary. And with the week 2 for town council, week 4 for this, the demand to get him out quicker and not try to squeeze it all in his personal life and school life is even higher now. And when we had a whole month to get it to the committee packet, now we have a week. So, that's why.
Which, as we discussed, I can handle until the end of August. Then the school starts again.
Yeah. So the first item, I'll stand here so my back's not to anybody. So with all that's going on and with, I feel so bad about Debbie, but the first item on the agenda is a proposal to keep the trail, but just back off the north end of it, back to, is this where did you?
Maybe, could I help kind of set it up?
Yeah, set it up, yeah.
What
Yeah.
we're talking about with, as pretty much all of you, the public know, we proposed this route, the committee proposed this route as what to pursue with Ford Design. And
The green, right?
the green, right, that's Summerfield Road. So basically from the tunnel through the watershed, a bunch, Pleasant Ridge, behind right through David Couch's property to his corner there, and then through the woods there at the Staffords and that general area by the community, residential community out here at the park, to get our way to the rail bed so we could get back on the rail bed and go north. And really we've had, like with the Staffords present here tonight, we know very much how strongly you feel opposed to that last part through your property. And then with the residents out there in this community at the park, you've expressed concerns to not just this committee but the town council, and you've been, just by your presence here tonight, shows us, I think, how sincerely concerned and interested you are in this last part of the trail. And so basically what Ms. Flowers was explaining in response to Don's comments was, at the last town council meeting, I know some of you weren't there and some of the committee members weren't there, but Ms. Stafford basically just asked point blank the council members their feelings on eminent domain. And while we didn't take a vote, I think it was very clear what the current sitting council members' thoughts were on that. They went down the list and everyone said they did not want to use eminent domain in this situation. And so given that, it seems like we need to rethink at least this ending portion of the proposed route. And just to talk a little bit about our discussion, Paul and I had a discussion with David Couch this week about just his, he has been watching this, he's talked to some of you, he's been learning more about how the immediate surrounding neighbors there in the community feels about what ultimately comes off of his corner here and proceeds north. And he is still, just to sum up the conversation without getting in a lot of detail, He's still very supportive of this plan and allowing us to go across in front of his farm up Pleasant Ridge Road, which, although we technically have right of way there, but still letting us, or still agreeable to what he was before. But what, in talking that through, considering what the council has clearly said about their current position on eminent domain and what the community's concerns are, we've just internally, and this is just our idea, Paul and I talking and considering everything. So we put it on the agenda. We don't want to say this is what we're going to do. We're just putting it out there for discussion to see how this committee feels in light of everything I just said. And what our thoughts were is maybe we could step back from this green line, step back all the way back to pretty much where his farm is there on Pleasant Ridge Road, and rethink, and I know we've talked about this a lot, but rethink from that point right there, basically at his driveway, because he's willing to let us go in behind his barn and through his property and get back in there where you all know his corner is back in there. But maybe we should try harder on
Without getting into alternatives, but
right,
before we go to alternative 2, let's erase part of alternative 1. So that means just let's get that behind all of us. Just get it behind us, and now, because I mean, we know you clap for that, but we're going to ask you, hope to help find alternative 2. We need an alternative 2. I still think the trails is a good idea. 100 years from now, I still want to see this here.
So we just want to open this up to officially here to the committee and see what you think about, because maybe you want to stay with the plan. I mean, we came this far with it, but maybe you don't. So it's time for the committee to talk about it, and ultimately, this committee is an advisory and recommending body to the town council. But what do you think? We're just opening that up for discussion.
Not to pick the alternative 2, but just, we know we need an alternative 2, but I'd like to get alternative 1 behind us and put them at ease, basically.
I don't understand what we've got at that point. Then we've got a trail that stops. We're not a whole lot better off than we are right now with no trail at all by doing that. So I'm not sure what we've got then.
1, 2,
Well,
8, maybe 8.
Yeah,
8 more.
so happy.
No, 8. Well, that's it's of course it's traded for somebody else. That's the hard
The
part.
question is, do you just want to take an eraser and erase back to basically his barn area at Summerfield Farms and talk through what might be options that would avoid those concerns that have been expressed? That's the question I think on the table.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it should be that.
Well, I think that, in a way, that makes sense, because my feeling was that when we said, okay, let's explore this route, it wasn't in, I think the public perception is that we drew this line and we said, this is where we're gonna go. And that was never our intention. If you look at the original motion, we specifically said to council that we still think that the Summerfield Road idea would be a good one. But this is the route we think we should explore now. And I think the way it came to you guys was, here it comes, and it's coming through, and it's coming through your land. And that wasn't, I don't think, the main intention. And so by erasing it, it's just sort of reinforces that that was the one that looked more like it had more potential at the time, and that's why we want to put more emphasis behind exploring that route.
Well, and to clarify that, when the committee came to the conclusion that this was a recommended route, it was specifically recommended for design. So the way it went to town council was, this is what the committee would like to recommend to pursue for design. And so that's where it first got so much attention and kind of stalled, if you will, for the concerns that were out there in the community. And so it was recommended for design, but yes, it wasn't, it was never etched in stone.
Well, I guess that's the confusion that we always had with this chicken before the egg, was like, the discussions we had leading up to that decision were, well, do we go and start asking for easements before we even know that the trail can work? Or do we look and see if the trail can work with a design study and then we go ask for easements? And that, so we chose to go, you know, the recommendation was to go for design.
And way back when, you know, when we got all excited and the Parks and Recreation Committee was working on this and the feasibility study came back, you know, we were even a little bit surprised at the second route, which would go up Pleasant Ridge Road. You know, not that we disapproved of it, but my feeling is we need to really look at several different options. We never have, we've looked at Summerfield Road and we've looked at Pleasant Ridge Road, but we really haven't stopped and picked, you know, looked at 10 different options. How can we get a Pleasant Ridge Road? Or every time I drive up Pleasant Ridge Road, I think, now, how could this work? How could we, you know, could we buy houses here and you know, I start thinking, but we haven't really sat down and looked at, is there a way down at 220 to go more closely following Summerfield Road, or what are the options when you get up Pleasant Ridge Road to David Couch's property? How many options do we have?
Right.
What are some possibilities?
Right. And that's where we were getting pushed in January, December with the so there was a behind the scenes going on at the MPO office. The MPO office, when you guys were working on it 3 years ago, were like, if we had just said yes, we'd be done with the trail now. They were ready. The decision process through the MPO, the money was there. Summerfield was a highly ranked project. But 3 years later, the ranking project had changed. We slipped from up here to 19th and 20th out of 20. And you can go see that on the MPO office January, February minutes. We were at the bottom of the project because of one ranking criteria change. So the MPO office said, guys, you need to demonstrate to us you want trail, get going on something. Just start something and we'll iron out the details later.
And part of it too was they would love, and we would all love to see a greenway. You've got people walking the greenway. If they get up here to Summerfield Road and see a sidewalk, they're going to go back to their car and, you know, go back to, I mean, does that make sense? I mean, they really want us, and we'd like to see a greenway. I mean, we'd like to see something that people use that Strawberry Road into Greensboro heavily. Yeah. And it'd be nice to think as they came on up through Summerfield that they wouldn't have to stop because it wasn't what they wanted to use.
Well, let me respond a little bit to that. We've been at this almost a year now, the committee has. And as far as Summerfield Road, I think you can speak up if I'm stating this wrong, but I think there's still a lot of interest on the committee in Summerfield Road, but we've looked at it very much, we looked at it in a lot of detail. We've looked at it, we've looked at the data. We haven't just looked at it kind of qualitatively, but we looked at it quantitatively, and that's what, I think it was 2 meetings ago when the MPO presented how many challenges there would be with easements and property owners coming up Summerfield Road in relation to the proposed route. We also looked at, long ago, talked about the options kind of up through the middle of this and talked about the challenges that are in there. And so out of all of that discussion, that's how we ultimately ended up walking the southern part of this green line and coming away with this. So,
well, and Scott, we also did look on that big map. And maybe in Google Earth too, we were looking at even farther and possible options up around there, but that was even more challenging.
Exploring over here and getting closer to where I-73 is coming through.
And topographically.
Right, and it was so much more of a deviation from, from the rail bed, which we were trying to not deviate too long and too far from the rail bed and ultimately get back to it, since it is the A&Y Greenway.
But the one thing to Dwayne's point too, the reason the MPO office like this one, this is a regional, this part of the trail will be part of a regional trail that goes on westward. through I-73.
which would be part of the Piedmont Greenway that would pick up in this area and go westerly. So,
But there may be some more routes, because we have that other map from the county that we haven't
Right.
really looked at.
Right, nope.
So.
Yeah, that's right. I don't want to
that's-
pull out any more proposals until we have a couple of ducks in a row. But yeah, you're
Well,
right.
that's to look at for
No,
heaven's
I
sakes.
agree.
It's not a proposal, it's something to look at. that
What
might
is that,
be
what is that
very-
you're talking about, Alice? I'm not familiar with that.
It's a map that Alex prepared that hasn't been looked at for the committee at all.
Oh, secret
On
map.
Summerfield Road.
No, it's not a
No, it's
secret
from the
map,
county.
it just
I don't
wasn't.
want to bring it up, I don't want
Wasn't.
to, I don't want to see it, because I don't want to get
Well, it's
the same thing talking about somebody else's property until we have a couple other things in place, like somebody to.
well, let's try to get back to the main
Yeah, but to what you said.
agenda item of how does the committee feel about about basically stepping back to David Couch's farm area here and looking from there forward? Do you think I'm almost hearing that you want to erase it all and start somewhere else. I mean,
I don't know where you
put
go
words
from
in your
there.
mouth, but I want to know.
All you can do is go up Pleasant Ridge Road, which I thought we didn't think was a very good idea, or going to my property, which I'm fine with, but I don't know where the heck you're gonna go through my property either, to tell you the truth. Go down Rabbit Hollow Road, but, you know, in the garage. I'm really excited about it, but I'm at it.
Well, I think we should take this, we cannot put Summerfield Road off the table.
No, I think it's still an alternative, and I think to your point, that we need to come back with alternatives.
Yeah.
But when we-
Yeah,
because we have-
and that's an alternative.
That's what I was
That's an
suggesting.
alternative.
I mean, there may be
Yeah.
there may be 5 different alternatives that
Right.
Mm-hmm.
that might open up. I mean, we can't know
Right.
until we've.
And you haven't seen
Yeah.
that. You
No, I have not
haven't
seen it.
You haven't seen it, and you haven't seen the proposals and the different proposed routes that actually Alex Ashton had suggested, because he knows the area.
Where is that
And,
map?
I guess the challenge I have with thinking about Summerfield Road at this point is we looked at so much data as far as how many different property owners we would need to deal with along this route, along Summerfield Road, to make that happen. And it's so many more in comparison to the proposed route, and we're talking about the challenges right now of the proposed route that has fewer obstacles. How would we think we could get up Summerfield Road if we're working off the premises that we don't want to have to pursue eminent domain? If that's our starting point this evening, or clarity, then how could we ever hope, and this is a question as a committee member, how could we ever hope to negotiate Summerfield Road without using eminent
We
domain?
don't know,
Well,
we
it's
talked
hard
to
till
people.
you get.
Well, the
somebody-
other thing though is, what about right of way? I mean, there is a DOT right of way along that road, and I don't know that we've ever really investigated that to see what we could do with that.
The MPO said that there's no way to fit the driving lanes and the necessary space for that, new sidewalks.
We would hopefully be buying houses somewhere, property somewhere up
But
Summerfield Road.
that's what MPO said, but Alex Ashton is a planner and has worked with trails for years, and that was really his job with the Guilford County. And so with his suggestions, I think that there are possibilities there. And the MPO doesn't necessarily reflect it accurately, because they're taking one side of the road, which has a lot of driveway cuts, and not the other side. But you don't know until you start talking and figuring out the different possibilities.
I agree.
Because it can go not straight up the road, it can maybe meander, and that's actually what some of his suggestions were.
I agree. It would be a shame not to start talking to people, and that's what hiring or somehow getting volunteers, someone who can go and start chatting with people and
Yeah,
see
yeah,
how
we
much
don't know,
resistance
it's
is.
feel the pulse of people along there.
I don't think we should be excluding it until we've run into a roadblock there.
I mean, I guess we know there's a couple of people along Summerfield Road that are not like real positive, is that right? I've heard some people say that.
I don't know, well,
I think they've showed up at town council.
That's my impression, but it's an impression and it's not fact.
Okay.
But the issue, I think we all agree, is we want more alternatives.
Right.
But I would like to have, that Scott has this person in place or close to it before we just start throwing out a ton of alternatives and have nothing but bad communication to deal with. But rather, we gotta balance that and be mindful of our alternatives before we throw them out publicly. And I mean,
this
that's
thing-
kind of the Alex approach too. I mean, he was quiet and calm and, the
Yeah,
county
he's-
approach versus the MPO approach.
Exactly,
The MPO is used to taking the
exactly.
federal route and we goofed and now we're back up and take the slower.
And when you go to people, they need to know exactly what we're proposing to go in there. Is it a 3-foot sidewalk or is it a 20-foot paved?
Right.
I mean, with it coming across our property, I'd like to know.
Right.
Is it gonna be horses coming up there, or is it, I pretty well know that, but, or is it gonna be just a kind of little gravel sidewalk that's not gonna,
Horses.
well, that's been talked about in
Horses,
Stokesdale.
north of,
Yeah, they would be,
that's a
I don't think the
possibility.
horses can go through the town of Summerfield, per se, but when they get past 150, I think they are on the plan.
There are no withers and round study.
I think,
That was mentioned in withers and round.
and I think even what Alex has already accomplished on the Stokesdale side, where he's already accumulated a mile of easements,
They're ready.
was based on a 10-foot wide crush and run or whatever you call that stone dust, so that it could be the horse thing. So it could be bikes or horses, or, it's not a paved surface, because that's really what the old railroad bed allows. It doesn't allow for both, you can't do a double,
Yeah, which,
so it needs to be one dual surface, which,
and when you're talking about 20-foot wide paved, well, not 20 feet paved, but that
Right.
type of width, then,
right.
And as a committee member, I'll just plainly say I'm pessimistic about the feasibility of the Greenway going up Summerfield Road because not just because of the MPO data, but because of the Withers and Ravenel study that, and you may or may not have a lot of respect for that study and feel like it was in depth enough, but based on that, based on the data that the MPO has shown, and based on what, just this whole idea of if we're not interested in using eminent domain and we want to be as agreeable as possible with property owners and as respectful as possible with property owners, I just don't see how Summerfield Road is feasible for the Greenway. Not to say that it wouldn't be for a sidewalk project if later on down the road, but as far as the Greenway, I think we're barking up the wrong tree on Summerfield Road. It's just my opinion.
But Scott, regardless of how each one feels about Summerfield, it's really about the measurables. So our job's
We've done that.
well, but on a rough, without dollar figures. So we came up with criteria except for dollar figures. So, I mean, we still.
Well, and it was without talking to anybody, too. Can we just
No,
chat with Steve?
no, I think it was
you have to
more,
be-
yeah.
It's
You have
more
the,
information, but
yeah, right.
Is it incredibly costly to talk to somebody? Is it to talk to the owners along the way? I mean, if we're saying we don't think it can be done, well, then we've already given ourselves a no answer. If we go and talk to the 15 owners and 14 say yes and one says no, then you were right. But
But not necessarily, you could go around it, I mean,
or go
go around it, it may be,
There may be alternatives.
alternatives, right?
Okay. But still, I support what
What we
you
would
were
like,
saying.
yeah, but you would like to see other alternatives. I think the group still would like to see other alternatives. And we need another alternative ending point for the green one either way. Anyway, we need another alternative on the green route.
I'm afraid that almost like just kills the trail then, and what you're talking about. I mean, then what are we talking about? What are we coming here to talk about for the next year?
Well, maybe get that Pleasant Ridge.
An alternative route. An alternative route. Yeah.
Well, but
We'll help you
maybe-
find one.
That's
Well,
what
to
I mean.
answer that, it's,
Yeah, we'll help you
if
find
we
one.
killed it right here, then I think what's there to talk about is, okay, well, if we can't go this way, what option, what's our alternative from right here? Maybe it's up Pleasant Ridge Road the rest of the way and Green Lawn or something else, but, or maybe it's over in here and coming out on Summerfield Road and catching some of that, but I think that's the talking point from right there forward.
I'm fine with removing the stuff that's not gonna work.
And David was quite positive, encouraging, just, hey, there's an alternative, don't give up it, there's some alternative,
Okay.
there's an alternative.
Well, what is?
Well, then that-
Well, I'm not saying I haven't, but I mean, he's like, let's just be creative. I mean, even maybe get DOT involved. I mean, with Pleasant Ridge Road, whatnot, turn it into, there's already been some proposals by them to widen Pleasant Ridge because of traffic and stuff. So try to build it in. It might take us 10 years, go slower and longer, but
We could
So
build
then
a
if
tunnel.
you do Pleasant
Yeah.
Ridge Road,
subway.
Don't put that in.
how do you get them?
We already got the whole tunnel.
I don't know, but I mean, he said don't give up. I mean, we might not solve it this month, but don't
But
don't
if you
quit.
do Pleasant Ridge Road, my question is, how then do you get to Suppies?
Oh, it's exactly the same point. You just pick up, you get to one, if you get over to Summerfield Road, well, then your goal was to jump, to get here where the thumbtack is and get back on the railhead in front of the school, and it comes,
So
spits you out the same
So
place.
you're going up Summerfield Road after Pleasant Ridge Road? Is
Maybe.
that
Well,
what-
and the
That's
thing
why.
is, there
I'm not
is a
saying we have
road
the
that goes
alternatives. He
behind.
just said don't
There
quit.
is a road that goes where that old house has been cleaned up, that road right there
Right.
is a straight shoot to
the
this
school.
school.
Right, through the, exactly, I mean, it's just, we just gotta get a little bit further. So you just said don't quit, and I don't wanna start picking people's property off tonight, I just would like to erase some green line.
So Jason just recommended that. Do you want to put that in a motion?
If you guys are ready, but I mean, only if,
To
A
back
motion
up
to
to the couch?
Sure, I'll move that we remove the proposed, the segment of the proposed trail routing between Town Park and David Couch's property.
Well,
Keeping open all kinds of options to consider. Is that right?
get a second and then I'll comment.
Right, okay, but keeping open options to consider to connect from David Couch's to the rail bed at the school. Everybody understand?
Yes.
I'll second it so we can discuss it.
Okay, I think if that's gonna be the motion, we need to clarify when you say David Couch's property, well, his property is up here at the corner, and I think what we're talking about is stepping back to basically the entrance to his farm, which is here. Is that what you intended?
That's fine.
I'd be happy with that point.
Sure. Okay.
But why?
I'll amend it to say that I move we remove the segment of the trail, proposed trail from Town Park down to Summerfield Farms entrance.
Say farm entrance, and that clarifies
Farm
it.
entrance.
Meaning.
With the understanding that we'll continue to look for alternative routings from there to the railroad bed at the school.
Well,
But I thought we had other alternatives too that we were
Yeah.
gonna talk about.
Well, this
I'm
is
just
just for
saying,
this one, this
my
is
motion
just
is
one
just to
motion.
That's just for this.
Just for-
alternative-
it's not-
Just for this alternative.
yes.
But for the sake of discussion,
Yep.
if David Couch has some ideas about this trail, okay, you could have it stop at the northernmost part of his property then. In other words, don't,
He's okay with
If he was gonna-
other things happening, he's not, yeah, but that's still,
You
he
mean
just
on
said
his
come back to
property?
here, yes.
It sounds
yes.
like
On his
he,
property.
Yes, he's.
We have
he's
a
open.
broader gamut of alternatives I think we can look at if we erase it back to right here instead of right here.
because for him, it doesn't make any difference.
Correct.
He's
He's
gonna,
still
correct, he's
valid.
gonna be cooperative.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes, yes.
indicating these.
yeah, if he had other ideas for how to move it around his property,
Then he can, yeah, around his property.
So that takes that last part of that off the table. We're no longer considering that.
Well,
It definitely, it definitely takes the Stafford's property off of this whole thing.
It takes the focus of the recommended route ultimately to council off the table right now. I think it's a fair way to say that.
Thank you.
Just
That's
caution
what
and
I'm-
clapping, that's because off of yours, off of y'all's means on to somebody else's. So
And we'll
it's
have
a
to
balance.
find another
It's-
way.
Thank you, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
It's a fine balance.
We'll build it, because I don't know the area.
we will know
We'll start
more
tomorrow.
way. We promise.
But one thing we really have never looked at too is coming up the west side of Summerfield Road. I mean, how far you have to come in there, but different routes.
Well,
that
Let's,
way.
let's solve this, we need to finish this motion and then
Okay.
we'll get into it.
so the motion was amended to pull it back to the end point at the Summerfield Farms entrance, but there was no second on that.
One second.
we had a second in discussion, but Alice had seconded it. So now you need to, if discussion's over, you need to vote on that.
You guys good with that?
Yeah.
So all those in favor? Or you wanna talk some more, you good? You
Me,
Yeah.
I'm not thrilled, I'm not gonna vote for it.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I
fine.
just don't really see where that
Okay.
goes for us. but-
We'll talk
So,
later.
4-1 on your minutes
Oh,
there,
5-1.
or 5-1, sorry,
Yes.
can't count.
Did you vote against or abstain?
What's the difference?
For my notes.
Spelling.
My hand didn't go up, that's all.
Somebody's gotta be against it, you know, so.
Yeah. Okay. So the second item, but since Craig's not here, it was just, we can only discuss it, we can then send a question to Craig.
I think.
Or would you like to solve the second?
Well, I think since there's still interest in those alternatives, maybe let's talk through, after that motion, let's talk through what else you might want to do, if anything, at this point, in terms of looking at alternatives. Is there any motion or discussion about alternatives, considering we've just erased that on our proposed route so far?
Just like I was saying, why couldn't we come west of Summerfield Road and kind of see, you know, is there a way up through there? There may not be.
You mean right along Summerfield Road?
Well, not
or-
necessarily right along, but
Further
even
into.
back.
Well, we have looked at that, but maybe, my point is, maybe you wanna look at that
I'd like to
more.
look at that
Yeah,
more, I
I'd
mean,
like to look at that.
Sally Line will be your key there.
Right, and that's a lot of property through there.
Yeah.
But there are three, the Summerfield Road, and then there's whatever the name of that next road is, and then there's the next road. There are actually
And there's
two more streets.
There's, and isn't there some property there that's been designated for a road but never become one? Do I recall that correctly?
There,
Yeah, 150 was that, I
No,
think about where,
I'm not thinking
not
about-
150.
I'm thinking about an older designation than that one I heard about, 150. Trying to remember. But I'd have to go back and look at maps again.
and we don't necessarily need a motion to that effect, but if there's a strong sense, for instance, of talking through more specifically what the options might be through the middle of that, that could be a good topic for the next meeting. I don't think we necessarily need a motion unless you have one, but it'd be good to let Paul know if that's something you want to talk about at maybe the next meeting.
I think that's a great idea, and in the meantime, perhaps we can begin on our own to look at GIS's maps.
And any of you, if you ever want to come up here individually and sit down and use this screen, look at GIS and look at property owners specifically on your own, come up here and I'll set you down and let you look through and use this. That's what it's for.
So doesn't the discussion of that alternative routing, we need to just start with talking to Sally?
Well, that's
I don't know.
Let me phrase it this
We
way.
got, yeah, you got to use it now.
Here's my thought, here's a thought, like a process, I'm more concerned with process now than a route. I know we can find a route. I want the process to be more uniform than we did the first time. 'Cause we had a lot of good ideas, but maybe what we do so we can get back to looking at alternatives is, if we sit here and talk about anybody's property or come up with an alternative we think is something that's worth exploring, we write down who that affects, and the next day we designate, okay, you please call them to say what we did, why we did it, so that they don't find out about it indirectly. They can find out about one of us and they would. I mean, but that's just a suggestion. I don't want somebody to read about it in the paper. That's what it's not.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Not the way to find out.
Start with asking her first before.
Well, but that's one of how many.
With the person that you're thinking of.
the challenge is if you go out to, if you identify a single property owner before you have you've talked through the full connections to that point. Right. The fair question from them is, well, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get to my property? And you can't get too far ahead of yourself to talk with somebody until you have enough of a plan that you can explain the basics of it. And so I think a good approach, like at the next meeting, we could really look at this in between and see if we could identify anything else that was feasible. And we could also look, just look at picking up where we just erased back to, start looking at those options again. And that's plenty for the next meeting. But I think we ought to do that before we single out any property owner and go try to talk to them, because it's.
Yeah, there might be something else to kill that route without even talking to her.
Right.
Well, my concern is that we just end up doing this exactly the same thing we did with you folks. Was we're trying to see if that was going to work.
Yeah, but we're not going to publish it on a map somewhere that people look at yet.
No, but look behind you.
But it's.
I mean, that's why I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. That's not the point. I try to balance how do we process wise come up with another alternative, and at least give them the courtesy of a phone call or something to say we're just exploring alternatives.
Well, I would say at least, like for Sally's property, is that even, not knowing what her take is on it, but is there even a way through there after we get across her property? Is there even a way through?
Right.
Well, that was Scott's point, because you still might touch 7 people there, so therefore there's 7 people that need to be contacted, not just
We
one.
may hit a dead end, and so Sally's property wouldn't even be
Right.
in the.
Right. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to balance the chicken and the egg thing, and I don't see it clearly. Alex did it all quietly behind the scenes, because, the railroad bed was the railroad bed.
Here's the thing, we just got the whole town of Summerfield, really. Really.
Right.
I don't think we could go on to anybody else. Maybe we should put it in Oak Ridge and then we're done with the whole thing. But, we got the whole town, and we could just start looking at the whole town as what are the alternatives, and then, looking for things that are, that make different ideas impossible, and sort of whittle it down that way. Does that make sense?
I think we got enough of a plan for the next meeting.
Okay.
Talking about this specifically. As to your question about item B, discussing the increase in the northernmost ending point, I think without the MPO here, I think that's a direct MPO question. I'd rather not get into that if that's okay with everybody.
What was that?
The item B on the agenda, discuss increasing the northernmost ending point of the Southern Trail proposal. What that's about is, Paul had suggested, get back up here for us.
And basically, you guys have kind of said this, and Nancy said it as well.
We've had this, the A&Y in Summerfield is divided up into north and south. And as far as the way everything is designated and listed and sectioned off, as far as DOT and the MPO and the projects are concerned, it's always, the southern part has been defined as the tunnel up into our, basically rail bed here at the school or our park area. So instead of going to say what you might think is a more reasonable cutoff at 150 up here at Dry Bridge. And long story short, that was set up by the previous manager that way. It's just kind of how it got defined. And the question is, can we tack on this part up to 150 and call that the southern part? And because of the funding and things, I think since we've already got it set up, that's an MPO
Right,
question.
it is his question. The only reason why for me is that's been intended to be the paved part, and from there forward would have been the gravel, more dual horse and stuff. So once you get the pavers out and set, just take care of separate the two as far as the construction project.
But the other part of,
But the MPO may say no, and then it's a viewpoint.
yeah, okay, well,
So, I didn't type the third thing on there, but we want to solve that. So we can draw straws. We need a new secretary. So we need to,
In August, after August.
well, probably even do the August meeting, because, well, other thing is vacation schedules. I won't be here the 4th week of July. He won't be here the 4th week of July.
it'd be good to just go ahead and vote on the change tonight if we got anybody interested in doing it, or that it's effective the next meeting. Although we got we've got some missing members tonight. So.
We can pick somebody not here.
Yeah.
That's all.
It would be for the September meeting here.
Up to you.
I mean, unless somebody is dying to get into doing secretary.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be cleaner if we could just go ahead and vote to do it, but however you want to do it.
Not me.
I guess the question is, do we have anybody interested in doing it? And if not, I guess we'll have to wait till the next meeting when hopefully we've got more people here.
I'll
Like
do it.
4 to 5 minutes.
Doug says he'll do
I'll do
it.
it.
Would you?
Yes.
That would be great.
All right.
Yes, I'll do it.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Good answer.
I'll tell you, you're already.
Hurry, make a motion.
Somebody here.
Yes, I move that, Doug.
I need the
second.
computer that,
You can use it.
it's yours.
Oh, wow.
Okay, we got a motion by Sue.
Do we have a second?
Second.
You good? Okay. So,
For Doug.
for Doug, so all those in favor, let's say at the August meeting, switching secretaries.
Okay.
So it's unanimous.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
And the timing was just,
Yeah.
okay.
Did you get that minutes? That you're in there?
I got it.
Let's do it.
Oh, okay, all right, I thought you were still doing it, okay.
Trying to recruit.
All right. Where to see?
Yeah. So with that, the last thing was to adjourn, so. You guys are good.
Can I put, I
Yes,
agree.
absolutely.
When are we going to discuss then, bring in the map of Summerfield Road and discuss that? And so just to lay it out on the table as, so we can see the possibilities that may exist. That's my question.
The map of Summerfield Road.
Well, the map of Summerfield Road that Alex Bastian prepared, that Alex was talking about.
Oh, okay. Well, who's got it?
Alex
He's got it
does.
outside.
But maybe, but yeah,
If you want that as part of the next meeting,
not necessarily. I want most of us to be here, and it may not, July may not be the right time.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
but I'm
not
just
sure on
putting one,
vacation.
put
I
in
will
the
be
minutes.
back home if my mind works right that day. I'll be here.
I'm gone. You're gone. But,
So maybe it's
so how-
September.
but the trail thing's fun, love picking out trails. But how do we address the process part of this? How do we take care of, think about that. How can we take care of not offending somebody?
You mean as we go up and look at.
Well, as we sit, or, yeah, basically sit here and discuss the next trail location possibilities. How do we go about the second step? We took care of the first step, fine, that was fun the first 6 months. But we didn't take care of step 2 very well.
Well, these are
So-
only,
But there's still
It's the
plans,
chi-
it's on.
It's the chicken and the egg thing.
Right, it crosses
Do we look
somebody's
at-
property.
Do we look at if there's any place we go through first, or do we go and talk to all the property owners and see who's in, who's out?
Or do we come up with a bunch of alternatives and have a public meeting and gather a lot of feedback? Because you guys have been very helpful. I mean, the parking thing, we never would have picked up on our own. The couple of other things, the measurables we would have had to have gotten to, but the,
Well, just the traffic around, the park, it was, I knew it was bad, but I just didn't realize
Right,
it was,
right,
it
it
was so bad that.
did any of you ever go to what was the last big one we held at the gym? That we had 10, 12, was that the comprehensive plan? We had 12 stations, 10 stations, and we went and rode on boards and.
That was, that was probably, that was before my time. The comp plan was 2010.
The area, Summerfield area road.
Or the area road plan.
Road plan.
That was late 2010.
Was it the Summerfield, was the one we were on?
That was the last one.
In the gym, we did a full
Now, the
public.
area, is this where
No, it
the,
was-
It
was the comp-
What was the comprehensive?
Yes.
The cafeteria is gone now.
Okay.
well, we met down at the new
Yes,
athletic
comp plan.
park. to-
We did it in the
to
cafeteria,
see
too.
These
Right.
proposals. Yeah,
Right,
but that was,
so-
I think that was at the new athletic
Yeah.
park.
So I've always kind of pictured that let's say we come up with 5 alternatives, 6 alternatives, whatever, but then we do something like that. But those folks have, I don't know, have got to have been talked to ahead of time. Or the way the MPO office runs it, normally it's one alternative, and according to their process, it's one alternative, and the property owners effective get a private meeting first, and then it's a public meeting second. I think it's not like there's a federal handbook on this, but that's kind of roughly what they do. Is that,
Well, we've got a process that we will, in terms of how many public hearings need to be held, and we want to go actually beyond that, and do, we want to make sure we got all the input that we need, so.
yeah.
Well, just so sometime we go over that, we go over that map, so we can see, get more ideas and get, a sense for what the possibilities are.
For alternatives.
For alternatives. And it doesn't have to be, it could be in the fall when it's more likely that everybody's here in September, but, and then maybe we can think about how the chicken or the egg, and think of that, I need to cogitate on that a little bit.
Could we resolve that? Could we make a blanket statement as a committee to just, to folks in Summerfield, just to say, hey, we're working on this in good faith, we're trying to look at all the possibilities. We want everyone to understand that we're not gonna come railroading through and take your property. We're just trying to figure out where could this trail go, and we'll come and talk to you before we go forward.
It
Is
seems
that
to
something
me
that can
that
be
we
done?
can just look at properties as opposed to planning the trail at that point. We just look and see. So that meeting would be looking and checking out, and somebody's saying that it could never go that way, and they're sure of it, and therefore we discard that, and we go to another one and we look at it, and we see what kinds of land there is, right-of-ways that might be there that we don't even know about.
Yeah, and find out who's screaming, It's a good way to get a litmus on.
But before we adjourn, it'd be good to take a pulse of, is there anybody besides Paul that can't be here at the next scheduled meeting if we have one in July? Jason,
Yeah.
July?
I don't think I'm gonna be here for August though. I'm
You
almost
cannot?
sure I'm not,
Not on July 22nd.
unless we
So we need
reschedule.
we need 5 out of 9, and that's already 3. So that
The
gets us
next
down to
meeting
potentially
is
6
July
that could be here.
It's the I won't be here the 22nd.
Can that be the 4th?
So what I'm getting at is if we think we're not gonna have a quorum, let's take 1 month off if we're not gonna have a quorum, because I don't wanna get citizens and people advertising, get people out here and not have a
July
quorum.
23rd, sorry.
Yeah.
July 23rd.
Is there any interest in pulling it forward?
I'm
I leave on the 16th.
I'm out of town most of July.
So maybe y'all make the decision of whether we have a July meeting or not now.
Just wait
Well,
till,
tonight
I'd say
we
let's
can-
wait till August.
August 27th is the fourth Wednesday.
Okay.
I won't be here, I know that.
You won't be here for August
Colorado.
27th?
Yeah.
For August.
Should we try to replan that one, maybe pull it back just a Would you be here the week prior?
July doesn't look
Yeah.
promising for a quorum, so maybe you want to entertain a motion of just delaying it to the regular August meeting, and then as we get closer, if we have to regroup on the exact date, but at least we can go ahead and communicate that we don't have a July one. If somebody wants to make a motion for the next meeting to be in August.
I have surgery on the August 27th.
I will do an email poll, you guys. I'll go back with an email to poll
Yeah.
about what we will rearrange
You can
August.
be good.
So,
Yeah.
wait to be a team player.
All work on it.
So,
I'll come back.
maybe a motion on just skipping the July.
Yeah, I make a motion to skip the July meeting because of the lack of, quorum, perceived quorum anyway.
Yeah, I hate to miss. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second. So all those in favor? Thank you. And I will send an email about a better week for August, so we get everybody.
Before your surgery.
Yes.
And when you're gonna be here.
Yeah.
Okay, so need a motion to adjourn?
Also moved.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Good.
I